one thing that does, I guess, it's interesting that even though the country is largely Christian, and many other African nations similarly, they also have a high percentage of AIDS, which you'd think the two would not go together. But,
A lot of orphan children.
It does,
right?
yeah. Right. Let's see. I'll use this microphone since I need to be here. Right. One thing that interested me in Zambia and Malawi is that both in the church in both nations are making active plans for growth. Despite their poor situations, they're interested in growing. And now their circumstances are different than ours. Their circumstances are even different from one another. So I'm not sure how much of their approach is necessarily applicable in the U.S., but I think the attitude is certainly a good lesson for us because they're laying foundations for growth. I'll start in Malawi, which is the poorer nation as a nation, but as far as the church goes, it's the nation in which the plans have seemed to progress the most. Now, the way they tell the story is in 1995 that John Halford visited them and informed them that effective immediately they would receive no more subsidies. That was a serious problem for them because so many of the members were subsistence farmers, had no cash. They gave their offerings in chickens and vegetables. The church needed some kind of cash, so they take an inventory of what they had, and they came up with 3 ideas for having a source of income. First, they had a minibus, which the church had bought for them, so their idea was to use that minibus as a taxi. In Malawi, most of the taxis have routes, like jeepneys in the Philippines. So they thought, well, maybe they could operate this and make some money that way. Another idea was to open a restaurant. They could cook, they could serve. They had a place. Maybe they could generate some income in that way. Third is they had a building, some property, and they thought maybe they could make a preschool. They might be able to generate private schools, are a common thing there, so that might be a source of income. So, well, the first 2 ideas didn't work out very well. I don't know what happened to the minibus or the restaurant, but they didn't work. But the school did work. They started with a preschool. They advertised in the neighborhood. They had 5 teachers. They did all this advertising. They got 2 students. Well, the next week a few more came, and then the next week a few more came. Eventually they broke even, and their students did well on the national standardized tests, so that gave them a reputation, and then they began to grow. Each year they would add another grade, and now they have up to 7 preschool plus 7 grades. And one of the chief justices in the city of Blantyre has his children there. So it's got a good reputation. They have more people applying than they have room for. Janet tried to tell them they should raise the prices. But I don't know, they didn't seem to comment on that. So anyway, this school is a source of income for all the churches in Malawi. It's not just the church in that city, but for all the churches in Malawi. The business manager is a church member, but most of the teachers are not. It's simply a business that they are able to run and function. That's the next slide. It's more of the school. It's nicely done. Next, 50 to 60 kids per classroom, with 2 teachers in each classroom. I'm not sure how that functions, but it does. You might remember a few issues back in Christian Odyssey that 2 American girls and 1 girl from Britain went to Malawi for a summer there to teach. That worked out well, and the 2 Americans are going back for another semester, another few months. And the presence of Americans in the school has further increased the reputation of the school. So that kind of helps stabilize and secure the income for the churches in Malawi. There's 2 kinds of expense: pastoral expenses and facilities. Only one pastor is employed full-time. The others get some kind of expense allowance, but most of the money the focus seems to go on land and buildings. And fortunately, both of them seem to be fairly cheap in Malawi. They can get land sometimes sometimes for free, sometimes they buy it, but still has the condition that they build something on it. The tribal chiefs want development. In Kabanga, that's here, the village about an hour away from the capital city, the chief gave them some land and they built that building. The chief wanted it done right. It's the biggest building in town. And the chief uses it for community leadership meetings. Yeah, and that's the classrooms they built too. I was interested in their construction techniques. The raw materials are dirt cheap, because it's dirt. The way you start building is dig in some ground, pour in some water, and you make mud. Next, you form it into bricks and let them dry. Next, stack them up and get them to dry some more. If it's a hot season, it dries too fast and they crack. But the season we were there apparently was just right for drying them slowly and well. Next, then they stack them up into kilns. They've got holes underneath to packed with firewood, and every layer of 5 bricks or so, they put a layer of tobacco stems. Tobacco is the main agricultural export of Malawi, so they've got a lot of stems lying around. Now, some of these kilns look like they hadn't been used for 5 years or so. People had just stacked up the bricks. They'd done part of their construction development, and well, they hadn't gotten any further. It seems that getting the bricks is the easy part. That's the cheapest part of the construction process. It still takes some money to lay foundations, to lay the bricks properly, to get the mortar. They mix cement with mud, and put on a roof, either thatch or corrugated metal. And it's like everywhere. I mean, this was everywhere, these piles of bricks. Just kilns, old kilns, all the other kind of piles of bricks. This was normal procedure in Malawi. I was kind of thinking about this. We don't do this in America, so why do they do it? I think there's 2 reasons for it. It's a means of avoiding inflation. If you put your money in the bank, you might not be able to buy very much next year. So if you put your money in bricks, they'll still be there. No one steals them. They're kind of heavy, and the neighbor has just as much bricks lying around as he does. And another reason for putting your money into bricks is that it becomes immune to the expectations of the extended family. If you have your money in the bank, you might suddenly be called to use that money. Funerals are a really big expense in Africa. People put on elaborate funerals. They have to invite all the relatives, extended family, anybody they can think of, and feed them for several days. But if you have bricks in the front yard, you aren't expected to use them for the funeral. So it's safer to put your money into bricks. So anyway, construction is relatively inexpensive in Malawi, so then the church has several buildings. Just buildings. No electricity, no running water. In some cases, dirt floors. In one case, no doors. It's just a building. And sometimes it's just a worship hall. No other room for children or anything like that. It's just a building. They bought some land in the capital city of Lilongwe and just down the road from the Assemblies of God. But now the city's threatened to take that land away from them because they haven't built anything on it yet. So that's now become the highest priority for the church board in Malawi. And they'll build something there. And they have plans for property in southern Malawi, which is this area here. They've got one building already, but they've got about 4 acres or so. And they have plans to develop that property into a conference center to be able to rent out to other people, to generate some income, but also to be a leadership training center for their own pastors. So they've got some space there, 60,000 bricks lying on the ground. They've got an investment there to build more in the future. They do want training. One of the pastors is going to the Assemblies of God seminary, and once he completes his studies there, he plans to share that with the other pastors. They have quarterly meetings, and he wants to say, all right, let's have training sessions, a week at a time to help share what he's learned, because they realize their need for training. The one pastor who's employed full-time asked me for some books. He wasn't asking for money. He wanted books for pastoral education. So I've already sent some there, and I'll be going to the used bookstore to see if I can find a few more books that's appropriate for his training, his level of experience. Now let's look at Zambia. Yeah, this is Zambia. Plans are not quite as developed there. Zambia also has about 10 churches. They're spread out over a longer distance because it's a bigger country. It takes about 12 hours to drive to the furthest church. So that doesn't happen very often. And so that the size of the country gives them some more challenges. But they have been able to develop some churches, make some plans for growth. They have that building that used to be a bar. They are storing up bricks for more there. I think the priority for those concrete blocks is to build a wall around their property first. But they also want to build a larger building. And they'll have to build it around the existing building and then take down the existing building. So, yeah, all right, I'll let them do that. Now, in Zambia, the construction is generally with concrete blocks rather than bricks. The blocks apparently more expensive than bricks. But the blocks are fairly easy to get. I mean, people make them on the side of the road. They sell them on the side of the road. They're apparently standardized size, and so they have this bring a block to church every Sunday, every once a month or so. So they're storing up their savings in time for their time to build. Here they're storing up some blocks, and this is a Central Lusaka congregation. I'm not sure how central it is. I don't see the downtown buildings there, but this is what they call the name of the church, Central Lusaka. So it's fairly accessible to a lot of people. But there, they've got the pastor's house, but they got blocks to build a future building. And they have land in the city of Chongwei, but they haven't begun to build there yet. They'll need to. So they have two plans for getting some income for the churches in Zambia. All right, this is one area they want to develop. One plan for income is to use the pastor where Kalangula Kaoma, the mission developer, currently lives. Once they build their house, they'll be able to rent out the other one. So that'll give them some income. But they're also, this is the house they want to sell. All right, next. This is a property they want to develop into like a conference center. They already use it for their own conferences, and kind of a camp-out conference. But they also see that there's potential there, just as they have rented retreat facilities from other places, that there's a need for that kind of thing. So they would like to create a center that people could use for retreats and meetings. It is off the beaten path. It's down a dirt road for, at least 5 miles. So it's not terribly accessible, but it's a retreat center. You don't expect it to be in the city. But it will take, they've developed this a little bit, but they would like to have more substantial buildings, concrete buildings, real floors and roofs. They've already got the borehole, the water pump, so that's a good start. But it does take, will take some financial investment to do anything further than that, and it's a bit slow now. So that house, the pastor's house, they provide some income that they will need for that. Now, that conference center, there again, well, it's not just a source of income, but it's also a place of training. One of the pastors is currently going to seminary. He's taking 6 classes at a time. So it's like, I don't know how he gets anything done, but he is energetic, and he wants to use that conference center as a place to help the other pastors there. This is probably common throughout Africa, but there's a need for training. The churches have grown faster than people can be trained. So they would like to at least one person get trained, and then they'll be able to train the others. Some kind of development like that. But the focus is on the growth that they continuing to have is something that we can pray about. We can be encouraged by them, and we can also encourage them to pray for the effective training of the pastors in a lot of situations like that. They seem to be doing a lot of things well, but they also know they need some continued training to be able to do it better and more effectively in line with the Word of God and what He's done for us. So they were really thankful that we came. Not that we trained them a lot, but we trained their children. And the gospel we gave to the children, we also gave to the adults, and that was well appreciated too. It was an exciting trip. There was a lot that happened that we can't tell you all the details. Maybe you're thankful. We have lots more slides, but we'll cut it short for now, and we'll turn it over to Ryan for our communion.